Okay, hello, welcome, good afternoon, good evening, no matter where you are in the world. Welcome to Seceon webinar with CompTIA and several of our MSSP partners. We'll be talking about unlocking new MRR with advanced security services. This is all about a fast track for high margin MSP advanced cloud security services. This webinar will be recorded. So the webinar will last about 60 minutes. We're going to start with some introductions. And then we've got opening remarks from Ron Culler of CompTIA. And then we have a panel discussion with three of our Seceon MSSP partners. And we will have a discussion about launching profitable managed security services. Afterwards, we're going to have a 5-minute demo and then a Q&A. So there's an opportunity for our audience to ask questions. Please use the Q&A function in Zoom webinar. This recording will be recorded, or this webinar will be recorded, and we will share it via email to all of the attendees and registrants. So with that, I'd like to, one moment here, I'd like to just introduce the panelists that we'll be having on in a few moments. We've got Ron Culler of CompTIA and Joshua Skeens, the CEO of Logically, Greg Mills from RFA, the CIO at RFA, and Tammy Jutras, the Director of Cybersecurity Services Advisory, and Tom Ertel, the SVP of Technical Sales here at Seceon. So with that, let's jump to the opening remarks from Ron Culler. So Ron, if you could kick it off, that would be great. Thank you.
Sure. Glad to be aboard here. What I wanted to do today was kind of kick off the state of what industry sees in cybersecurity and what the IT channel sees. And this is from our research at CompTIA, from our 2024 cybersecurity report and our newly released State of the IT channel. So go ahead and next slide. So this is some data from our 2024 State of Cybersecurity report, where we actually targeted and interviewed actual individuals in the IT sector, not necessarily in the channel, but IT sector. And these are the things that are driving their concerns. Obviously growing number of hackers and cyber criminals, privacy, generative AI has just exploded onto the scene in the last year. There's a lot of fluff, a lot of confusion. It's not uncommon to hear people talk about AI doing something and actually inferring generative AI or one of the chatbots versus actual machine learning or some of the other AI models that have been in use for decades now. But these types of things are really starting to drive the concerns inside of organizations. And even with some of the new changes on the federal side and regulatory side, we're starting to see more teeth and more guidance coming out. So organizations, large and small, have to deal with this now, where before they tended to kind of shuffle it off. Next slide. So in our 2024 report, we noticed some significant changes versus the year prior. One of them was organizations are starting to put a higher focus and a higher priority on determining how to respond to incidents. And incident response is a huge deal. And if you don't know what's going on inside of your environments, you can't respond to it. They're looking for faster processes, more tools, better education. And unfortunately, due to some of the issues that we've seen for the last 5 or 6 years, and we'll probably continue to see for the next decade or so, there's a huge employment gap when it comes to cybersecurity professionals and having skilled individuals. So everybody's looking for every way and every advantage they have, they can make use of to protect their networks. More organizations are looking at cybersecurity insurance. They're building dedicated teams, but they're also looking at third parties because they know they can't do it themselves. That's a key point, is that organizations across the landscape realize that they can't manage this by themselves. They don't have the expertise in house, and that's something that's really going to take set you guys and set potential partners at an advantage, because that's the space that we can really excel in. Go ahead, next slide. Of course, you've got the AI in cybersecurity thing. I call it a thing. It's this marketing fluff. Sorry, Will. That's out there everywhere. I was at RSA last year, and every single vendor had something with the words AI on it. So it was kind of difficult to determine what was going on. But like I mentioned earlier, cybersecurity and AI have been working together for decades. If you've ever had something, an email message caught in a spam filter, there's a little bit of machine learning that was involved in that. So, they're looking at potential uses for not generative AI necessarily, but more the machine learning, the probabilities, pattern recognition, anomaly detection, things of those instances that are really starting to step up the traditional SIMs and log analysis devices and tools that used to exist, still do, but they generated a lot of noise. There was a lot of maintenance, a lot of work. Those types of things are being augmented with machine learning and numerous algorithms that are helping to increase this. Doesn't mean that generative AI is not going to be there. There's a lot of organizations that are working on generative AI functions inside of their platforms, and it does a really good piece, especially the chatbots, the large language models like ChatGPT and Google Bard. They have the capability of rephrasing something, explaining something in a methodology that someone else can use. You could take a highly technical document, say, re-summarize this in a format styled for this audience type, and it'll do that. It'll do it really well. So you're going to see that one of the disadvantages in those large language models is they need large amounts of data, and not everybody has that capability. Next slide. So this is where our newly released State of the IT Channel report comes in, and we start looking at some of the factors contributing to the healthy channel. And this is North American responders. Technology is complex, and it's getting more complex, and there's a lot more going on. Adoption of generative AI tools and demand for cyber services, adoption of cloud. Really everybody in the industry right now is feeling this push of all of their customers coming to them and asking them, I need more, I need more. So this is a good thing when you consider some of the growth over the last few years. Next slide. Now here's where our channel respondents expect to see growth in the next few years. Integration services, which most MSPs still have some integration services tied with it. They're not really looking at that big of a change, a small increase. Cybersecurity services is where they're looking the money. That's where they expect the most change to come. I'm not quite sure of the 4% that expects a decrease, but when it comes to cybersecurity services, you're going to see increases. Everybody out there needs it. So we were happy with that. I'll go ahead and next slide. Along with those increased services, you got to look at your profit margins. You can have all the great services in the world, and if you're not pricing it right, and if it's not profitable, if it's costing you more money than you're making on it, then you've got to change something. Cybersecurity services, one of those pieces that has not become commoditized. There are things out there that are commoditized, and you really can't change those cybersecurity services because they're so specialized, and there's it expands or it covers the entirety of an organization. You've got a lot more flexibility. So our respondents are expecting to see some significant changes in the profitability over the next 2 years from those. It's app services, cloud services, managed services. They're all expecting those things to go up. Go ahead to the next slide. And this is the one that should hit home with every one of you guys. Everybody wants cybersecurity services. If you've got customers that aren't asking, then there may be a message that needs to be changed, or or look for somebody different as a customer, because every business out there right now is really looking for security. Everybody's moving their apps and services to cloud-based subscriptions. They're moving off-prem rapidly in a lot of instances, or taking a hybrid approach. So there's a lot that MSPs need to watch now. The threat landscape and the size of your organization's networks have gotten larger, especially over the last 3 years. So this is something where we see a lot of increase, and most people in our channel surveys were really excited and looking forward to this. And I think that's my last slide. There was a methodology that's got some data about our reports. Both of these reports are available on our website, CompTIA.org, the state of cybersecurity, and our new state of the channel. So feel free to check our website out, and you have access to this research. It's publicly available.
Great. Thank you, Ron. That was a great insight into those two wonderful CompTIA reports. And they're available on the CompTIA website, available on the Seceon website as well. And thank you very much. Now let's turn to our panel. And if each of you could introduce yourselves, going left to right, and then we'll get started with our panel discussion.
Thanks, Ron Culler. I'm the Vice President of Cyber Development Programs at CompTIA. I'm a 30-year cybersecurity industry veteran. I built an MSSP in 2000 before people knew what MSSP was, other than a couple of letters. So I understand this market in the area, and now I function as a thought leader and product strategist for CompTIA for their certifications as well as community projects.
Thank you, Ron. Josh?
Yeah, Josh Wiskeen, CEO at Logically. Been in the industry for 20 years. I know Tom and Ron were arguing behind the scenes who's got more years in the business. Luckily, it's not me. Has caused my hair to fall out though, but been in cyber for 20 years now. Excited to be on the panel and looking forward to today's discussion.
Great. Thanks, Josh. Greg?
Greg Danilis, CIO of RFA. RFA is a fairly large managed service provider. It's been in business for over 30 years. About 10 years ago, we built out the MSSP arm for the company and has been successfully growing it and enhancing it ever since.
Great. Thank you, Greg. And Tammy?
Hello, everyone. I'm Tammy Jutras, the Director of Cybersecurity Services Advisory. Our company offers managed security services to businesses of all sizes. Mostly we're in the financial services, wealth management vertical. Like Josh said, we were throwing around years of service here. I've been in various functions within IT for over 25 years. The last 10 to 15 specifically in the cybersecurity area. There's always something new to learn. I'm excited to talk to you today about, how you can jump into the managed service security platform if that's something that you'd like. So enjoy the talk today.
Great. Thank you, Tammy. And Tom.
Yeah, hey everyone. Tom Ertl here with Seceon. I've been in high-tech networking telecoms for a lot of years, in the last 10, physical and cybersecurity. So glad to be here.
Great. Thanks, Tom. And I'm William Toll. I'm the VP of Marketing here at Seceon, and I'm going to play the role of moderator today. So with that, we're going to switch over to cameras for a moment, and we'll get started with our questions. First up, I'm super curious about the key drivers today that are driving demand for managed security services. I think, Ron, you indicated if your clients aren't asking for cybersecurity, maybe get new clients. But I think we all know that it's a big challenge to secure businesses of all sizes. But maybe if we could get started with the panelists and some of their thoughts. Tammy.
Sure. I know we're seeing it come across daily with insurance forms that we have to help clients figure out, right? So there's higher insurance underwriting standards now. They seem to change yearly along with the higher premiums, as well as growing cybercrime activities, right? That whole landscape has really changed. So there's a lot of areas to keep track of now. And I think a lot of it's just out of people's realm of understanding. So they need expert help. Great.
I think, Greg, you mentioned you have a lot of financial services clients. How is that driving demand?
Well, for the regulated clients, like financial services are, and also driven by various geo-specific or country-specific regulations, is actually a very large driver for the cybersecurity and the managed cybersecurity especially. For example, basically, SEC in the United States has been enhancing demands or regulations or requirements for the financial companies. Europe is taking it even further. Like, let's say, especially if your MSP does business in Europe, or you have European clients one way or another, be prepared with the DORA requirements that are probably the most enhanced and wide requirements I have seen out of any regulations that I'm aware of. And the important part there is that it's placing a very significant requirements on the vendor side of the business. So if you think you're in a US company and you have, let's say, European clients, don't think the DORA doesn't apply to you. It does. And your clients will require you to be DORA compliant as a vendor for them. But generally speaking, I think one of the biggest drivers is that, in addition to regulations, is that many businesses, especially small businesses, they sort of woke up to thought that the cybersecurity is for everybody, not just for the larger companies. And some of them, it took ransomware incidents or some other breaches of some kind. But at this point, I think everybody understands that they need to have cybersecurity program one way or another. It might be slightly different, for different companies, but I think anybody would not want to talk about cybersecurity. And to paraphrase what Ron said, if your client is not talking to you about cybersecurity, it might be because they're getting it from somewhere else, and you need to convince them that you can provide it.
That's a good point. Very, very good. Josh, what's driving demand for managed security services for you?
I think it's time. Greg kind of hit on it. There for a long time, people believed that it wasn't going to happen to them. And we're human, and it takes time sometimes for things to register for us to see multiple people pop up in the news again and again and again. And it finally registers and clicks of, hey, this could happen to me too. And it's not a matter of if, but when. But some other things that we're seeing too is there's starting to be a generational shift in leadership in a lot of businesses. And having came from a business previously that had an older founder, you can just see those mindsets start to shift in people when new leadership comes in. They start to, specifically if they're a little bit younger, they start to really take technology and cybersecurity very seriously, because those generations have grown up with technology at their fingertips at all times, and they understand security and they understand what the risks are. So they go find budget and they understand that they need to take it very seriously. So for me right now, I think it's time and a little bit of a leadership shift at some of these businesses.
Yeah, that's a good point. Kind of leads into the next question that we had here. Can you explain the essential components of a successful managed security services offering? How do they differ from traditional security solutions or what many MSPs are providing today?
Let me start. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Greg. You can start.
Thank you. I think the major difference is the service, really. Like, I mean, it's called the managed security services for a reason. And let's say if you look back, any MSP would have some kind of, let's say, antivirus partnership, for example, and they would deploy it to the endpoints, and that's pretty much for the end of it, right? So the service component of cybersecurity, the security operations center, vulnerability management, and there's a variety of different services in this ecosystem. I think the service component is what really makes the difference, and this is really where the money is. Like when we're talking about MRR, I mean, this is where the MRR really lies. And when we're talking about managed cybersecurity, it's not just SOC, right? It's not just MDR or EDR. There is a very significant ecosystem of services that can be offered in under this umbrella, and to cover all kinds of needs that clients might have. And this is kind of beauty of it, of the managed security, is that it's ever evolving ecosystem. The needs are evolving, the threats are evolving. So it's a never ending sort of source of revenue, really for the managed service providers.
Great. Josh, you.
Yeah, I think it's a holistic approach, right? I mean, that's the difference from an MSP to an MSSP is MSPs traditionally would go in, install a signature-based AV, maybe say that they're doing some firewall management, and that's about it. Where MSSPs, we're taking a holistic approach, a layered defense and detection strategy for our clients, which includes MDR and EDR and SOC as a service and cybersecurity road mapping and maturity models. And the best way I can explain it is an MSP, typically the person that comes in and works on your printer is the same one that's going to be logging into your EDR. And a mature business would never have that. An MSSP is going to have somebody doing both jobs that are very, very knowledgeable in both aspects of the business. And that's where we need to get to. If you're an MSP, you need to strive to be there from an MSSP perspective. It doesn't mean that you can't still do those things that an MSP does, But I'll be honest with you, there's 85,000 plus MSPs in the world. It's a commodity. And Ron kind of hit on that a little bit in his opening, that, you know, cybersecurity is not a commodity. It takes a different level of personnel and strategy and thought. We're all leveraging the same tools. There are no secrets. It's all about who can execute, and it's very difficult to execute.
That's great. And Tammy, I know you have a lot of experience executing a cybersecurity program.
Yeah, and both Greg and Josh, you know, summed this up really well. Hopefully I can just, you know, tie it up with a bow here. You know, I would say to really think about it in terms of end-to-end coverage, right? You really want to be looking at everything from the external all the way down to the user, those printers, those IoT devices, right? It's more than just workstations, servers, and some AV. And definitely, you know, you need to have staff who bring that different skill set, right? They have to be experts in cyber and forensics, and, you know, at least know where to go get the information, right? Like Josh said, it's not going to be the same person who's, you know, helping you with your password that's going to be able to get you through an email compromise, right? You need people who understand the nuances of incidents and how to deal with them correctly. You know, there's also some quick response time, right? You need to have, you know, enough people on the team who are even maybe offering after hours support, you know, so that they can keep up with things that come in, you know, at all times. So it's just a little bit of moving away from the traditional, more reactive to moving toward more of a proactive mindset.
Yeah, reactive to proactive. That's a good point. Tom, from Seceon here, I know you speak to hundreds of MSPs every month and MSSPs. Tell me a little bit about the essential components. What are they most interested in? What challenges do they have? What goals are they speaking to you and Seceon about?
Sure, William. So I think, you know, in talking in going with some of the things Ron said earlier, you know, what's really vital to them is having tools that can help them catch things, as Tammy just said, proactively, not reactively, right? So, and something else Ron mentioned, you know, the ubiquitous ML and AI. Everybody talks about it. Everybody claims it. So it's hard to distinguish yourself with that. But the truth is, I just gave a talk in Atlanta last week on this. Without it, you can't keep up with, you know, the bad guys, right? I mean, ML and AI means, in one sense, it means fast, right? Those are software running on computers doing things at you know, nanoseconds. Having humans try to keep up with that it's impossible. Actually, you can't. So, you know, what they're asking about, they're trying to more and more understand what AI and ML really mean, how they can apply it in their environment, and, you know, how they can therefore help protect themselves and their customers.
Great. You know, Greg, you mentioned earlier about starting the MSSP business or the practice in your organization 10 years ago or so. And when you think about that point and today, if you were an MSP just looking to launch advanced security services, as Ron pointed out, higher revenues and higher profits are all there for the taking. What are some of the best practices that you had, or maybe you see the companies that are succeeding? What are they applying?
So if you're starting an MSSP practice inside the MSP, so the very first question that you need to ask yourself is that, what is the reason you're doing this, right? And what I mean by this is, does it make sense for you to build 24/7 security operations center yourself? Because it costs a significant amount of money to do, right? Can you even handle that? Do you need to do this, or do you need to partner with somebody who can provide it for you? What services do you want to offer? How you kind of prove the value proposition to the customer? And most importantly, how do you build the operational component of your cybersecurity services? I think that was probably, for us, it was one of the most challenging parts, because technology takes time, but you can put it together, right? The operational component is what can make or break your cybersecurity services. You can have perfect technology. If there is the operations break, you don't deliver the service in time, it could be detrimental to the company. So we ended up actually writing our own software to run the SOC operations, sort of like a middleware platform that allows us to connect a variety of different point cybersecurity platforms into it. But it's again, MSPs are different sizes and they have different needs. So for some of them, might make sense to partner with another MSSP who can kind of take over this whole service ecosystem and provide the service through MSSP. It's not as high revenue as you do when you do it yourself, but it's a matter of risk appetite, so to speak. And another part of it is like you can't, like if you want to grow your MSSP, you have to be the source of truth and the source of everything cybersecurity for your client, right? Which means you need to, like, let's say if your client's compliance is important to your clients, you have to fold it in. Vulnerability management, various aspects of the cybersecurity, incident response. So you have to be able to provide this type of services in one capacity or another. Some of the more complex services, like forensics, for example, might not make sense to do in-house, but you need to build out the partner ecosystem on a standby, so to speak, to be available to you. So kind of putting all this together and make it fully operational model is probably the biggest challenge.
Mm-hmm.
But once you put it together, it's much easier sailing from there.
Yeah.
Right.
You do need to keep up. You need to do pivots, adjustments, and evolution of the offering. But I would say initial operations is the most challenging aspect.
Great. Anyone else? Ron, you have some thoughts on best practices?
Yeah, I think the key thing is focus. Focus on what your expertise is in. So if you're dealing with primarily financial services customers or retail customers or healthcare, whatever the focus is of your customer base, become the expert in everything for that environment. You can't be the generalist that has a dozen, different types of customers, and really all you're doing is PC desktop server, desktop application support. That's not the kind of business you can run and then step into the cyberspace. You really need to pay attention and focus. And like Gregory mentioned, you need to make the determination whether you can scale 24/7, whether you can spin up data centers or cloud environments, understand the regulatory environments in your space. And one thing that I've always said, and was one of our driving mantras, was get your own house in order. You have to have your business tight and straight and operationally in tune. And that means regulatory risk, compliance, incident response, everything you need to do. Because if you're not ready in your own house, how can you protect anybody else?
That's right. I know, Josh, you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'll take it a little bit different approach. Is I think the MSPs have, and I've been blessed enough to be a part of these and talk about these. MSPs really have three options. You can either build it, you can buy it, or you can borrow it. Mm-hmm. And I've been a part of building it from scratch for 15 plus years. We built an MSSP, and and did exactly what you said, Ron. Anything and everything we were going to do, we were going to be the SMEs, and we were going to know it like the back of our hands. That's the reason why we ended up becoming a world-class MSSP. And now leading an organization that bought that platform, and now we're integrating it and have this, national presence of a really large company that's providing cybersecurity globally. It's been interesting to see that, but you have to understand for you, what is your business model? What is your commitment to really becoming cybersecurity experts? Because it's not for the faint of heart, and it can cost you a lot of money. And it can cost you a lot of money in a good way. It can cost you a lot of money in a bad way. If you make, I talk about maybe you got halfway in and you decided it's not for you. You spent a lot of money getting halfway there. So you really have to understand what your commitment to this is. If you're an MSP, I would tell you that you really need to be looking and considering trying to get into the cybersecurity space. If you're not today, because of our services in many aspects becoming a commodity on the MSP side, and we're just battling for price a lot of times. But the best thing you can do from an MSP sometimes is just borrow it. There's a lot of great partners that are out there that will allow you to leverage their services and their skills while you're building it in the background until one day you can take the keys over and you can run it yourself. So you kind of got to understand where you're at from a maturation level in a business perspective, what your funding level is like, and what your appetite for risk is like as well.
That's right. The compliance and regulatory challenges that MSPs are facing when offering managed security services continues to evolve, right? We have CISA looking after MSPs and MSSPs as a very large attack surface. We've got a continual entourage of both industry-driven and government-driven regulations and compliance. And I know, Greg, you talked about DORA, but maybe Josh or Tammy or Tom, if you have some thoughts about any of the other regulations, HIPAA or PCI, and how they continue to evolve with increased requirements for log retention and all sorts of details that is kind of forcing the hand of MSPs and MSSPs to up their game. Maybe you have some thoughts there.
I know we do a lot with SEC regulations, which sort of are their own little compliance division. And what they're really looking for now is for the owners and the compliance folks at these companies to understand what they have in place. They want them to be a part of owning their cybersecurity and being, responsible for it. So a lot of what I do is educate and help people understand the security layers that are in place, why they're there, what they're doing, so that they can speak to it as well. It's not always just about, throwing everything over the fence to your MSSP and saying, you deal with it. The company also has to have some skin in the game, right? So that they can understand what layers are in place and what they're responsible for. So that's how that's changing a little bit for our industry.
Yeah, that's a good point, Tammy. I would say, I talk about it like compliance can be a checkbox, security is not. And a lot of times businesses over the last decade have been lulled in the thought of, I can just check this thing off and I can just get away with my compliance. And much of that's going away now, even from a cyber insurance perspective, of where if you say you're doing something, they want you to be able to attest and show proof now that you are doing those things before they'll even give you your coverage. Where they used to forgive you when you had an incident and you said you were doing something and didn't, and they might still give you some money on a payout. Well, those days are long gone because insurance companies have been upside down on paying these things out. Yeah. There's a reason why large A+ insurance carriers are considering getting out of the game. They're losing money on this, and insurance companies don't lose money. From a compliance perspective, take PCI DSS, looking into 4.0, if you're not doing encryption at the swipe, they're going to hammer you hard now on making sure that you have SOC as a service, a SOC, SIM, log retention, and requiring that you show proof, where that didn't used to be the case in old versions. And that's only going to get tighter and tighter and tighter. Because at the end of the day, this all comes back to money. And I think that we all know that on this panel, and they don't want to lose money. And it all comes back to those organizations and cyber insurance paying out premiums whenever there's an incident and premiums going up and having to pay out. They don't want to lose money, so they're going to continue to ratchet this stuff up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know, good.
Yeah, from the platform provider's perspective, it's a little different, right? We have to help MSPs, MSSPs show some level of reporting on these types of compliance standards. And, the number of standards is growing. CMMC is popping up, GDPR, there's a bunch in internet, a ton happen internationally. So it's really important that you have a platform and the ability to add new capabilities like this as they come. They can't be, a year-long effort to get a new report out. You have to be able to do this pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, the role that AI and ML is playing in cybersecurity on both sides, from the attacker side and from the service provider side, has become essential. It's like an arms race, if you will. I know, Ron, you touched on AI and ML being historically driving a lot of the cyber platforms, but there's a lot of confusion thanks to the consumerization of AI and LLMs. And maybe, and Tom, you gave a talk in Atlanta last week. Maybe if the group here could help MSPs understand what to ask for. What do you look for in a platform that's driving your business and delivering the technologies and capabilities that you need? What should an MSP look for when they're considering AI and ML in the platforms? Craig?
In my
Josh?
opinion, the platform needs to be a differentiator, or at least one of the big differentiators for the company. So today, the cybersecurity provider market, I mean, it's not saturated, but pretty busy, pretty crowded. Right. So, and let's say when you are an MSP, trying to be an MSSP, you need to be able to tell the client why they should be buying your solution versus somebody else's. And it's actually MSPs that are kind of starting to transition in the space. In my opinion, they do have advantage because they can pick and choose from the modern solutions, and they can architect the service that allows them the easy evolution of the solutions. That was actually, when we built out our service, that was one of the drivers for us, because at the time, the traditional managed security service providers, like the big ones, they were struggling because they just couldn't keep up, and they couldn't bring machine learning to the market. They couldn't bring the AI to the market because they just were stuck in the past with their gigantic backend system. They couldn't upgrade, essentially. So, and we had this advantage, and it helped us significantly while kind of starting up and acquiring our initial clients for the business. So today, there's the whole new breed of solutions coming to the market. I mean, obviously, ML solutions that existed in the market, like Seceon, for example, they continue to evolve and then continue to remain strong. But there is a point solutions that come into market that AI-driven, let's say, as one of the, let's say, if we're talking about the offensive AI, I think one of the probably the most strongest and kind of impactful areas that we see at is phishing, right? So, I mean, now you can write the perfect phishing email without even speaking English, really. So it makes it a lot more difficult. And now we have, let's say, solutions that using AI to identify, the phishing emails written by AI. So this kind of things. And again, those are emerging use cases, but they are kind of can illustrate, how, let's say, attractive or how advanced your potential service offering might be. But I think ultimately, the ML and AI is like if your solution doesn't have it, you might as well don't even start.
Yeah, one thing
Yeah.
I've learned a long time ago was to ask questions. And at RSA last year, like I said, everybody had AI banners on every product. And you walk up to them and you ask them, okay, what models are you using? What engines? What are the what's the reason this is being used? What are you detecting? What are you providing? And if you get blank stares, just move on to the next vendor, because you're going to get a lot of blank stares right now. There's a lot of people trying to shove something in, even if it's just a chat bot, to say we now have an AI tool. And what Gregory mentioned with the phishing, I've seen this. Email's an experiment created back in the 60s, and it's never been secured or standardized or given any kind of structure to do anything. And so, things like phishing and virus and malware inclusion inside of email messages has been there for years. No longer can you rely on that, bad grammar from the Nigerian prince. These things are real now. Add on top of that the layers with generative AI and the ability to mimic video and audio of an individual, images of an individual. You can, this is social engineering. This is not something that can easily be detected by any kind of technology. These are people in process, and that's something that MSPs have to realize as well. That there are tools out there, and AI and machine learning are phenomenal tools at data analysis and getting to the heart of a problem. But there's also a people problem that that we need to work on as practitioners.
Yeah. So last question before the demo. If the MSSPs on the panel here, could you share some thoughts on pricing and packaging your services? What is the best methodology to package up your service and price it? Any thoughts? Maybe Josh?
Yeah, always be flexible, but don't be low cost. And that's what I can tell you. I see a lot in this, specifically when we're talking about MSPs trying to get into the MSSP space. And what I mean by that is, and I know I sound like a broken record here, but the MSP space is such a commodity these days that everything is almost based off of price. I learned a long time ago that if a customer will come to you because of price, they will leave you tomorrow because of price. So don't race to the bottom. Make sure that you can show your value. I'm not saying that you have to be the most expensive. But if you don't believe in your own value and then you can't show that value back to your client, it's always going to be about price. Be willing to be flexible, because if you're an MSP or an MSSP that spans the range of customers like we do, SMB to, we play in enterprise clients, hundreds of thousands of users. They're not going to buy a bundle. I can't go to a customer that is a multi-billion-dollar company and tell them, you must buy this bundle of tools that you have 7 of the 8 already, or I won't do business with you. It doesn't work that way. So be aware of where you're playing in the market. And sometimes a bundle works really well. We sell bundles, it works great. But also mid-market, lower enterprise, they're not going to buy bundled tools. So make sure you're very flexible with that. But my biggest nugget is make sure that you're not just trying to compete on price, because your business will not be successful in the long run.
Great. And Tammy, any thoughts?
I think one of the things we really tried to do when we were putting together our offerings was, to really have that advanced cybersecurity stack that works well together, and not try to, put things together that just aren't going to work, right? So think about all of those areas of compliance that you need to manage, whether it's, employee training or, logging or, EDR, those kinds of things. You really want to think about, what are those best in breed providers and products that are going to do that, put them together. Are they going to play nice on the endpoint and in the environment, and really stick with those things that, that can deliver a good result.
Great. And Greg, any thoughts there?
I'll be a little more utilitarian. So everything that Tommy said and that Josh said makes perfect sense. I subscribe to all of it. The one thing I want to add is that if you're trying to transition to MSSP, your packaging and pricing needs to be aligned. Like it needs to be simple and it needs to be aligned with kind of your typical packaging, which is for the most part is a per user, per device. So what this means is that when you're selecting a partner, when you're selecting the platform, the pricing from the vendor has to be aligned with the pricing that you would create for the client. Meaning, if you're selecting a vendor who charges you based on the ingestion rate or ingestion amounts, it's going to be extremely difficult to translate into a per user pricing. I tried many times, it doesn't work. Like, believe me. So that's what I'm saying. This is not many people kind of sometimes think about it, but whatever you pay into your vendors has to be aligned with how you're charging your customers.
Yep. So that's great advice. Thank you, Greg. Tom, if we could switch to do a demo. First, I want to thank the panelists. Some great insights for our audience today. Do stay on. We do have a Q&A, and I can see a couple good questions in the system. So Tom, if you could please run through very quickly some thoughts about Seceon. Go ahead.
Sure, and 5 minutes isn't anywhere near enough. So I'll just share that we're happy to give a private demo to anyone else who's interested. I also have a weekly demo at 1 o'clock on Thursdays, EST, that you can sign up on our website for. So this is just a sort of high-level overview of our platform. And at the very top, you see the ubiquitous AI, ML, that Ron referenced. And I completely agree with him. If you're at a show, go ask people, what does it mean? And I'll tell you in hopefully less than 30 seconds what it means to us, right? So one of the keys to being able to protect somebody and be proactive, meaning detect things early in the kill chain, right, is to be able to collect enough data so you can really understand what's going on in the environment. You have to collect every piece of data available. Well, to do that, you need a very powerful, I'll use machine learning as my example, machine learning to collect that, sort it, understand what it means, and, translate all those different languages, those different log sources, everything, different vendors, information, translate it all to a common language, and then put it into some sort of format where your AI can then use it and say, okay, this makes sense. I see that this host has this activity, which doesn't look normal, it looks malicious. Let's go out and take some action here. So AI in our environment means looking at all that data as an analyst would, and then trying to protect you, right? So catching things early, long before you ever get to the point where you've got encryption, exfiltration. So again, that's the key. Collect as much information as you can. To do that, you're going to need, a very powerful engine to be able to keep up with all that data and make heads or tails of it. Other things you see here, we have a very full range of capabilities, always innovating. We've added all the EDR and EPP, and then what we call PMAX in additional functionality. I'll show a slide of our security scorecard coming up. We've also added some functionality recently called AIM CGuard, which is for the ability for you to go onto our website, sign up, and actually do an installation. And for a cloud-based or an Azure-based, let's say, a solution, you can instantly sign up. And for MSSPs, you get a 50 free NFR licenses. Next slide. So this slide is sort of highlighting what I just said, that pyramid you see in the middle. So this is a real environment where we collected, the green at the top shows 1.38 billion pieces of information. That's all logs, flows, EDR, telemetry from Salesforce, Zscaler, whatever it might be. The blue box is, again, now the platform taking all that information, building those behavioral models for each host and looking for anomalies, right? A failed login, a scan for the first time, a blacklisted site access. There were 1.55 million anomalous behaviors out of those 1.39 billion events. Again, a human cannot keep up with that. No, an army of humans can't keep up with 1.55 million. This is in 7 days. So this is where you need your AI, you need your ML, you got to keep up with the bad guys, right? So be able to find these little hidden problems in that vast amount of activity, detect them, correlate them, and then take action. So the red is what we've then correlated down to the bottom of that pyramid is what we correlated down to actual alerts. Here's what an alert looks like in our platform. MITRE attack techniques across the top here. The red means the ones that were used. The middle is really the power of the platform from my perspective. This is where we're showing you the different types of activities we've collected, how many of each instance, across what period of time, and that's important. You know, an activity 3 weeks ago, an attack may have come in, sat dormant for a week, it came in, did a little bit of activities, and sat dormant. Now, a human has to remember that it saw, 3 weeks ago, an escalated privilege, to say. Then it has to remember that a week ago, it saw a scan for the first time. Maybe this morning, it saw a new server access. Humans would have a very difficult time remembering all that, tracking all that, keeping up with it. The platform is doing that for you in software in real time. And at the bottom here, you see a nice graphical representation of a host and then all the activity that has been tracked. But eventually, that red line goes up and we say, okay, we've raised an alert here, we've seen enough. So this is really where the platform is doing all that work for you so that you don't have to have an army of humans tracking all this. And so you can catch things again early in the process. Once you catch something, the platform has the ability to remediate. So you can do manual remediation, which is an analyst going into the last screen we showed and taking a look and deciding to take action. Or you can do auto remediation. Either way, you can set up a playbook, right? So we have SOAR built in. You can set up playbooks, very nice drag and drop interface, where you can say, okay, here's the actions I want to take when I get this type of alert. I want to assign to someone. I want to send out an email. I want to take this remediation action. So very nice drag and drop, make it simple. This is some new functionality we've added, Score 360. This is the ability to actually do a domain scan and an internal scan and come up with sort of a security risk scorecard, if you will, of this particular customer, this particular environment, and what the risk score looks like. And another nice piece, that upper right corner, we can graph that over time. So you can hopefully show, trending in the right direction. And again, this is the kind of thing that you actually are probably going to need for cybersecurity, cyber insurance going forward. You're going to need to be able to prove that you've been taking some action. Last thing here is just we have, a multitude of reports built in, compliance reports, and the ability to create your own custom reports. So again, CMMC is something that's coming that, we've built this infrastructure, so now we can keep adding I don't remember how many different line items that are on CMMC, but it's a lot. So the ability to turn all that into a report.
Great.
So that's the overview.
Great. Thanks, Tom. And I do want to get to one of the questions that came in. I know a lot of MSPs talk with us about this. How much do you share about how you're running your business, how you're running security operations with your clients or your prospects? Someone asked that. I'd like to add to that. Is there anything that's changing, the transparency that you and your organization is changing? Josh.
Yeah, sure. I'm a pretty transparent guy. So as long as it's not going to implicate us financially or give away some intellectual property, we will share as much as humanly possible. I feel like it's important to have that trust and that relationship with your partners, but your customers as well. And you get asked the question all the time, well, aren't you concerned that somebody's going to take that information and go do their own thing or anything like that? At the end of the day, I can give you my recipe for my cake. You're never going to bake my cake the way I bake my cake. And I can almost guarantee you it's not going to taste as good either. So I'll give you my recipe, but you probably won't follow it exactly. So the cake's not going to taste the same. So we're going to be pretty honest and transparent with our customers and our partners on exactly what we're doing.
Great. Tammy, Greg?
I like that. Josh, a cake baked with love always tastes better, doesn't it?
It sure does.
Yeah, I would say we're transparent as well. I would say it depends on the level of technical knowledge with the client, right? We're going to share with them to the level that they can understand, and we're probably not going to go into every little, minutia level of detail. But yeah, we talk with them about the products that we're using and how we're protecting them. I think that's important.
That's great. And Greg?
Yeah, and as I said previously, we actually see it as a differentiator. So we're happy to share vendors that we're using because we spend a lot of time doing R&D and picking the best vendors on the market. At least we think they're the best. And as far as the operational component, I mean, we do have a transparency to it as well, because as George said, you need to win customers' trust and confidence, and you can't do it by being secretive.
Great. Well, Ron, Tom, any closing remarks here?
No,
No.
I'm good.
Great.
It's great to see everyone, and thanks, Ron, for all of your insights.
Glad to help.
Yeah, very much want to thank all of the panelists for their time today and thank our audience. This recording of the webinar will be shared with you via email. And we look forward to more of these discussions with CompTIA and our MSP and MSSP partners. So thank you very much from Seceon, and we'll see you out there in cyber world. Thank you.
Thank you,
everybody.